You're listening to another episode of Our PAC Politics Podcast. Our podcast is brought to you by our organization, Our United Resource PAC. We are a tax-exempt political organization. Hello, guys. I am your host, Brittany McDowell. And again, thank you so much for tuning in to Our PAC Politics Podcast. Let me start this episode. I did not make it clear on Monday's episode that we would not have an episode on Wednesday because it was a non-working day for us, right? Hopefully you guys are, safe, especially when we look at these COVID numbers. It is not safe. Speaking of safety, let me say to our men and women in uniform that I thank you so much for your service. It's guys, my head is all over the place. Are you guys seeing these numbers? Do you remember what seemed like way back earlier this year when we were dealing with when COVID-19 kind of first reared its ugly head to the scene, and we were all freaking out over 1,000 cases, a total of 1,000 cases, right? We were freaking out when we were seeing, 10 new cases a day, 100 new cases a day. We have now decided to accept as a country, or at least a sizable majority of Americans, have decided that it is okay that we have essentially 150,000 of our fellow Americans contracting COVID-19, and now over 1,100 people dying, 1,100 Americans dying in a country where we have an immense amount of resources, where we have some of the brightest minds on the planet. We have decided to just let our fellow Americans die. That's not okay. As I tell my 2-year-old nephew, that's not okay, right? And it sucks that I have to talk to Americans like I talk to my 2-year-old nephew when I say that's not okay. But apparently some of you guys don't get it. That's not okay. But anywho, I'm not going to, as much as I really want to, make this episode some sort of a lecture about how it is not okay that we've decided to accept this as a country, that we've decided that it's okay for 1,000 plus Americans to die every day of something that, even if it's not 100% preventable, there are certain minimal things that we can do as a society. Things that I'm not asking you guys to go out there and get a shot or literally just cover your mouth, right? You cover your mouth when you sneeze, but you can't cover your mouth to save a life. Anywho, let me stop because again, I so want to go on just a rant about how some of you guys are just stupid, literally stupid. You're stupid, you're inconsiderate, and oh my gosh. Anywho, today, guys, I am talking about the post-election stimulus update. If you don't know, on Monday's episode, I talked about, because I talked to myself, to you, right? Monday, I talked about some of the stimulus efforts, some of the forms of stimulus that Americans are going to see gone by the 31st of next month, if they've not already seen some of these programs disappear because they've been phased out prior to. So we talked about kind of what is dying, what's phasing out dying, 150,000 Americans might be on their way to if we don't decide to do anything about. But anywho, we've talked about what forms of stimulus are dying, but I really didn't focus on what is actually being done in this moment. And that's what I want to dedicate this show to today, because there are some things that are occurring, despite the fact that it might seem like it's not occurring. And when I've listened to some pundits talk about COVID-19 economic stimulus and relief since the election, some people are kind of looking at the fact that Donald Trump has effectively removed himself from the equation is kind of a good thing. But I actually beg to differ, and I'll talk about that as we get into today's show. So, again, this intro has gone on long enough, and it started with my rant, and I'll probably rant again how it is not okay that we have collectively decided that 150,000 plus Americans are getting COVID-19 every day. I'm probably going to mention that again because, as I tell my nephew, it's not okay. And if you don't know, I'm going to say it again. It is not okay. So I want to talk about some people who are finally coming back to work, but I actually saw something. I wasn't planning to share this with you guys, but I saw something that was funny and troubling and made me feel a whole bunch of different emotions, kind of like I've been feeling since before the election. But, in 2020 has been such an unpredictable year for mass amounts of Americans, right? Many people have lost their jobs, they've lost their health insurance, they've been evicted. And I bet a lot of people really didn't take the time to consider the fact that our COVID in chief right now, a man who, quite frankly, has not been able to relate to Americans. He's this very wealthy, very powerful man who has the biggest, bestest brain we've ever seen and heard of before, right? He does so well at his memory tests and he has the best body and best health ever. Let his doctors, he's just this man above the rest of us, right? And a lot of you, I bet, didn't stop to think about the fact that this man in this year in 2020 has probably been more like other Americans than probably ever in his life before, right? In 2020, I just named how, so many people, so many Americans, so many of us average measly peasants have dealt with, these difficult things. But, I think 2020 has humanized COVID in chief, Donald Trump, because he has had a year that is literally on par with other Americans. He got COVID-19. He lost his job. He's about to get evicted. As a result of losing his job, he's going to use that excellent health insurance that he had, and so I just really want you guys to take a moment to kind of realize that the president, he's really a man of the people, right? He's he's right here with us, as not humorous as this is. I mean, he's a man who really is, he's the most awesomest, greatest American who has the bestest, biggest brain. But anywho, so now that is out the way, when I saw that, I don't know who sent that to me, and I saw it and I just chuckled. I was like, wow. But no, I actually do want to talk about some people who are actually coming back to work again. I know that a lot of you have lost your jobs in 2020 through no fault of your own. But again, we do have some people, a group of Americans who did not lose their jobs, and they are actually on track to come back to work on Monday. These are actually our employees, people that we employ, right? I bet you didn't know that you have employees that should be working hard for you each and every day that they show up to their measly, maggly, squiggly jobs, right? But so essentially, guys, these people are supposed to be coming to work on Monday, Congress, but quite frankly, we all know that given the time that given what we dubbed the time between an election and the next administration, which will not be a smooth transition to Trump's second term. I literally, guys, when I saw that comment, but anyway. So these people, they're coming back to work, but we all know that they are now officially in this lame duck session. And so we know that the lame duck is lame and doesn't do anything. But despite the fact that we know that, again, it is official that the Senate, they've actually been back in Washington. But the House of Representatives, they are actually going to join the Senate. They're, in Washington, D.C. on Monday to kind of, quote unquote, work out the remaining portion of their elected term post-election. Now, if you don't know, if you haven't been keeping up, because I know a lot of people have been so enamored with the election that they really haven't paid attention to what has been going on with stimulus talks. And if you look at the past few episodes I've done, I really haven't been focused on stimulus talks. And even though we do focus on stimulus, we really have been talking a lot about essentially the election, right, and its impact on stimulus, not exactly stimulus itself. But so just to kind of sum up kind of where we are, it shouldn't be a surprise because it's where we were before. You still have Republicans who are demanding, and I'm not going to here's what I'm going to say. I've mentioned several times before that when it comes to politicians, both sides, any side, all sides, you need to understand the psychology, right, behind what they are doing. They don't just let you see certain things, like when we think that things are leaked, especially when they leak them from their own camps. Politics is all about perception, and perception is not just what you see, it's also what you hear. So you need to be very mindful, not even just with politicians, but when you hear news being reported to you, be mindful of the words that people are choosing to use, because even if they claim that they are attempting to, like on news shows or especially YouTubers, they like to use the word unbiased. I'm not a biased source of media. But then when you look at how they're phrasing things, the words they decide to use, because the words you use, no one is forcing you to use certain words. You make a choice. And a lot of these people are educated people and they have an expanded vocabulary, right? And so when they decide to use words, for instance, like targeted, they know that what they're asking for is a smaller package, but they know that if they say targeted, it plays better, and in most cases it will go over the heads of people who are actually receiving the language. So they're not going to be the people receiving the language and hearing the language are not going to think, well, this person actually wants to do less for me. They're going to be thinking, oh, well, they want to do something very specific for me. You see what I'm saying? Like, you see what I'm getting at? So just kind of keep that in mind. So that said, I'm not going to use the word targeted that Republicans have decided to use for optical reasons, for psychological reasons. I'm going to use the word that is essentially, like in the words of the president, it is what it is. They want to do something smaller, right? If you're actually comparing the size of, if we want to describe the size of what they are actually looking to do, the size of the package, which it's kind of odd when you think about it. Republicans like to argue that the problems that they've had with stimulus has been the size, but when they convey their points, they don't describe it in terms of size, right? They were describing it in terms of size, they would say smaller. But when they say targeted, guys, again, psychology here. But anywho, before I continue on that tangent, where we are right now with stimulus is that Republicans today, November 13th, at this point, they are still demanding a smaller package. And actually, they're demanding something smaller than they were a few weeks ago. Why? Because things appear to be getting better. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later too, because I'm highly annoyed. And I really want you to understand, again, kind of the optics, specifically the optics that are being played with data. I mentioned in one of the earlier episodes when we brought the podcast back, I mentioned that, look, numbers don't change, but the interpretation of the numbers can be changed. You can use data to support anything you want it to say, right? Like, it's just a matter of fidagling and fadoodling, and getting things in a certain position, and you can make it be interpreted however you want it to be interpreted. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. On the flip side, considering where Democrats are, again, so we mentioned that Republicans are still looking to get something and demanding something small. Democrats, they are still demanding something large, right? Quite frankly, again, when you look at Republicans, they are actually asking for something smaller than what they were originally asking for. And then when you look at Democrats, they're still seeking something large, but they haven't moved to ask for something larger. And neither side want to budge, right? But if you ask me, both of them should be willing to budge, and they should be willing to budge towards something larger. Why? Because the problem is getting worse, right? Despite what they want these unemployment numbers to tell you, these unemployment numbers are not getting better. And we're going to talk about why they are not getting better. Because when you understand how they're being calculated, you will understand again that what you were being sold is a farce. What you were being sold is a lie. And we need to talk about that. And quite frankly, we need to demand that they actually restructure how they report these numbers, because it's absolutely crazy when you think about it. But so this is where we are. These people are coming back to work, but long story short, they're really not coming back to work, because historically and most certainly in this moment, they are not going to come back to work. Like, they're just there for show. They're there to collect this check and go home. I was not happy about the re-election of Mitch McConnell. I really wasn't. And I think that was very obvious, because I stated that in, the episode that we had post-election. But I will say that I am glad about something related to Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell has finally admitted something that I think, if you have not believed it based on his actions, which, mind you, I say all the time, look, oh my God, I promise you guys, I have an iPhone, and on the side, I put the flap thing down so I see the red, so it was silent, and I still forgot that I had an alarm. And I turned off my Outlook. I closed it. I was like, okay, I'm surely not going to get any interruptions during this episode. And lo and behold, again, I forgot that I set an alarm on my phone. I am the worst. I am the absolute worst. But no, really, let's actually get back to talking about the worst, right? And that worst is Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, again, I have made no qualms, and I've made no, it's not been a secret how I have felt about the man, right? And I've come a long way, because I've actually just called him a man. Despite I wanted to call him some other form of a creature that you might hear a lot of other people refer to him as. But I'm feeling nice today and pretty friendly, so I am going to leave that alone. So Mitch McConnell, though, to his credit, he has finally been honest about something. And I think that we all need to hear it and acknowledge it, because I've said all the time that people need to look at what people do and not just what they say. If you have been looking at what Mitch McConnell has been doing, you've been pretty clear about what he actually has just said. But for those who've refused to look at his actions, or just not really know how to interpret his actions, I want you to be very, very clear about what he's actually now being clear about. Mitch McConnell is finally being clear about the fact and admitting that he has not been serious about stimulus. He has not been serious about stimulus. He said this, and I quote, "But I do think there needs to be another package. Hopefully we can get past the impasse we've had now for 4 or 5 months and get serious." End quote. So if a person says that they need to get serious, that means that previously they weren't serious. And I applaud Mitch for that. I think that it's a noble thing, in politics. It's, again, especially because optics and perception are a big thing. It's a very big move for this man to get to a point where he is willing to openly admit that, I haven't been doing my job to this point. I haven't been serious. So, I applaud him, because I'm sure it was a tough decision to finally make that admission and actually say, you know what, I'm willing to try now. I'm willing to actually do this. I'm willing to get serious. So speaking of what people are saying, let me share with you something that Nancy Pelosi said. And I quote, "It has been our position all along to crush the virus, honor our heroes, put money in the pockets of the American people. This is what we put in the Heroes Act to crush the virus." End quote. Look, this is what I have to say. We, especially in, previous months, because it's been months since we had the Heroes Act passed, right? At least in the House of Representatives. Um, I mentioned in the previous segment that what Republicans have been arguing when we talk about their opposition to the other side, they've been arguing on the basis of the other side wanting a larger package, right? They've been arguing about the scope of the package. But something when I look at pundits who have the opportunity to interview these politicians, even though to their credit, Mitch McConnell has been in hiding. Based on who and what I say he is, I do want to make a joke about where I think he's been hiding, but I'm not going to do that because, again, I am feeling quite lovely and peachy today, despite the fact that 150,000 plus of my freaking fellow Americans are out there contracting COVID when they don't have to. Right? I tell my 2-year-old nephew, that is not okay, Anthony. And I'm telling all of you, that is not okay. So, anyhow, I see people who have been in a position to interview opposition to specifically the Heroes Act. They never really push back. And if they do push back, they push back where the politicians are. And again, where Republicans are is they are on the argument of, well, it's too big and I want to talk about money. Okay, but you know what? If you want to talk about money, let's talk about that money being spent. What specifically do you oppose? Like, I want you to be very specific about what it is that you oppose in the Heroes Act. We know one that they were very, willing to admit, for instance, was I don't want to give money to states and local governments because they are awful states and local governments that, don't manage their funds well and they were poorly managed. Okay. I'm not saying that I agree with that, but I will say this. Past that argument, typically what happens is the pundits who were able to ask that question and then go along with that line of questioning, they get stuck on that question. Like, literally what needs to happen is we need to have people say, okay, you disagree with that. What else do you disagree with? What else do you want to have a list of things that are in the Heroes Act? Okay, we do hear about their opposition to things that may benefit certain industries, such as like the cannabis industry. If you notice, they pick out things that they can kind of play to their base, right? But especially when you consider, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, how recent proposals that have come from the Republicans do not include a $1,200 stimulus check. Notice that just kind of disappeared. They didn't want to talk about that. They did not want to talk about that. Why? Because they understand that a lot of their constituents actually need that $1,200. $1,200 that, mind you, wouldn't be enough for some people. Actually, for most people. Considering how long we've been going at this and how far behind many Americans are on basic bills, $1,200 would be like literally they'd get the check at 12 o'clock. By 1, 2, maybe 3 o'clock, that money would be gone. What specifically is it that they oppose outside of government and state funding, outside of stuff related to the cannabis bill? Okay, we see you obviously don't want $1,200 checks. Make them defend that. If they don't want to give money to our healthcare heroes and give hazard pay, make them defend that. Put these people on blast on TV, on the radio, make them defend their positions. This is how they can prance around and they can continue to oppose in secret because they don't have to defend in public. The second they start have to publicly defend popular things, even things that are popular among their base, that is when what happens in private will be transformed. But because it's not having to be explained in public, they can just deny in private. Push back on the specifics. You want a smaller number in the Heroes Act? What are you willing to cut? Even if they're not willing to talk about it in the Senate, when you get them on TV, when you get them on the record, ask about it. Ask about specifics. Make them defend their position. It bothers me again, and I literally say this at every episode. I am not some champion of Nancy Pelosi. I don't really care for the woman, but she, to her credit, has had to defend she always is having to defend her decision to want to help the American people. But we never see these people looking to not help the American people. They never have to defend their position. And if they do, it's a softball kind of thing because, of course, we want them to come back for future interviews. So we don't want to say anything to them. But do you not understand, people, that they want, just as much as you want them back, they also want a platform to be able to come back and talk to their base on TV. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. Recognize your power. And if all of these companies and platforms and media companies can get on the same page and not try to coddle these people like we're coddling COVID in chief, we have, Donald, it's okay. You lost the election. How long are we going to stroke this man's back? Tell him it's to stroke it all the way out the White House. You got to go. Time to go. He worked in real estate. Give him an eviction notice. Put it on the door. Let him know, yo, you got this is your notice to vacate. Let's talk to him in his language. He's in real estate. He hasn't understood. He has not understood our electoral process. Okay, he wanted to run on being this outsider of politics. Okay, so let's not talk to him in political lingo. Let's talk to him in real estate lingo. He understands real estate. Somebody go put a 3-day notice on his door. Well, he has more than 3 days, but give him a notice to vacate. Put it on the door. He will understand that. That is the lane he is in. Let's stick to him. Let's talk to him in his own lane. He will understand that. Anywho, that is not what I was talking about. Let me make it clear. Let me get back to talking about Mitch McConnell. Okay. Mitch McConnell, I said before, he has removed, and again, you probably didn't know this, not only because he didn't publicly talk about this, but you really don't hear people who get the opportunity. Again, he has been in hiding, so I will give outlets that Mitch McConnell has been in hiding. Could be some health-related issue, especially if you've seen his hands, right? His hands are literally purple. And I know that people who, for instance, get certain health conditions, especially those related to like loss of oxygen, one of the things that happens is they start getting discoloration in extremities. But I am not a medical professional, so I'm going to leave that alone. So Mitch McConnell, though, he has, again, behind the scenes, because he's not been publicly accountable for it, he has removed his current proposals, and I'm talking about Mitch McConnell because he is their leader, right? Dear leader, the great man, the great one is bombarded. He is hiding in a legal camp in the White House, right? He is about to start squatting, right? So we can't talk about, COVID in chief because we are trying to coax him out of his squatting situation. And he's too emotionally unstable at this point. But so when it comes to Mitch McConnell, though, we're talking about him because he's the leadership. He literally is the political leader on the right at this point. And so he pulled out of his current proposals what he wants to do to help our economy. It does not include giving Americans a measly, because let's call it what it is, a measly, super bestest, dumbest measly $1,200 single one-time check for Americans who have had to endure this for months, who have gone without assistance for months, who are deciding between, in the words of myself, it is not okay. So, anywho, he has pulled this out of kind of what he's proposing. He does not want more stimulus checks, okay? What he wants trickle-down stimulus. He wants a stimulus where we cut a check to companies, and companies get that money and they will somehow make it rain upon the American people. Trickle-down economics does not work in the type of economy that we have, okay? Let me explain something to you. We've had several people at this point, several wealthy people, several business people talk about this. They've been honest about this, and it's amazing. And it actually speaks to their values and their morals, especially because when you look at what they can benefit from the system as it currently is set up, the fact that they speak out against the establishment should be to their credit. But quite frankly, what we've had a situation, or let me put it like this: you can't have a situation where you give a business money, right? Now, mind you, you don't know if that business would have been around. You don't know if that business, like, for instance, especially when early on we were talking about specifically helping out the hospitality industry and specifically hotels. I, in one episode, spoke in depth about how hotels, for instance, have really been negatively impacted. Their business model has suffered as a result of evolution with that industry and another industry that kind of runs like parallel to it, and that's, well, not even an industry, but like a really big business. You probably heard of it, Airbnb, right? And we've seen in this economy how obviously hotels have been around, and but they've been impacted by change. It's kind of like, just think of like what was that, Blockbuster. Used to go there on Fridays with my mom and get like movies that like we'd take until Sunday, and like, but they had to change, and eventually they went out of business. Right now, I'm not saying that hotels are going out of business, but they've got to do something and figure out something for their business model. But here we have people, because they are so beholden, we have Congress people that are so beholden to people that donate from them, these industries that really donate to their reelection campaigns. So these Congress people have fought tooth and nail for these companies, these specific companies, to go ahead and get assistance, but they like literally did not talk at all about how these companies, these industries were dying anyways. So we've propped them up. Maybe this was literally the nail in the coffin that they needed, that really propelled them to make the changes that they needed. But you didn't want to do that because you just wanted to throw a check at them. Like, and it boggles my mind, because they literally had a problem, and they literally demonized Americans for making more money on unemployment in some cases than they did before they were unemployed through no fault of their own. But they didn't demonize businesses in that same, well, they were dying anyways. What happened to the free freaking market? But look, we can't have a situation where we give businesses money, and sure, they can operate, they can keep their people on payroll, but and what cracks me up, I literally just kind of thought about something. We think about how, for instance, we want Americans to go out there and get jobs because we don't want them depending on daddy government, right? They need to be self-sufficient. We don't argue the same thing for business. These, without customers, no matter if you're talking B2B, business to business, or business to consumer, ultimately we have a consumer-based economy. If you have a business, for instance, that sells directly to your average everyday consumers, if that consumer doesn't have money, even if the government is giving that business money, unless the government is going to continue to give that business money, they are at some point going to need average everyday consumers. And if consumers don't have money, it doesn't matter how much money daddy government is giving those businesses. Even if it's not a B2C company and it's a B2B, like, a wholesale or something like that, ultimately, if the business that if business A, the supplier, doesn't is giving is selling to business B, the purchaser who actually goes and gives stuff to consumer and sells directly to consumers, yeah, they're B2B, but if business B, who actually deals directly with consumers, starts having their business negatively impacted by this COVID-19 shenanigans that we're allowing to run rampant, when we've decided that it is okay to allow 150,000 Americans plus a day get COVID-19, which is not okay. When these businesses, when the businesses they are actually selling to start noticing a decline in their actual consumer base, then you have B2Bs impacted. So we can't sit up here and act like we have this economy where we can just help businesses and do nothing for consumers. We cannot do that. Even if you have, just say, I don't know, Bob's Building Company, and the government says, we're going to give Bob's Building Company, we're going to pay 100% of his employees' wages so he can keep every employee, there at the company. Okay, that's great. But you know what? Unless that company has consumers, either daddy government is going to have to continue to go ahead and continue the corporate welfare, because that's what it is, corporate welfare, or they're going to have to just let people go, because if the government cuts off, its supply, they have no money to pay people. So you literally have to help consumers. Let me tell you something, and I mentioned how politicians and even pundits use psychology, for instance, when they determine when they specifically focus on the linguistics that they use, the language that they use when they either communicate or talk about certain things. Think about this. Do you know why some people prefer to help businesses? I mean, even if they don't themselves have businesses, do you know why they decide to do that? Think about it from the government's perspective. They're going to have to help you either way, right? If you don't have a job, you're going to have to get on some form of government assistance, most likely. If if you don't have like a portfolio or savings to fall back on, you're going to need food assistance, so on and so forth. So you're going to need public assistance, or they're going to have to help your employer. But if they help your employer, there's the psychology of you feeling security that you otherwise would not feel if you had to directly depend on the government. Think of it as kind of like a wholesaler type relationship. Instead of the government coming and directly helping you, they're using the middleman of an employer by giving the money to the employer. When they're helping you either way, then there's also the control that you gain if they help you versus the control that they have, again, through the psychological programming of, I have security because I have a job. This stuff is deep, man. When you really understand what's going on, this stuff is deep. You've got to open your freaking eyes. Open your freaking eyes. Because even when they try and frame it as, oh, we're helping businesses, they're actually helping you, but indirectly through the businesses. They just don't want to help you directly. I want to talk about the White House. Now, I know the thing that everyone is talking about with White House is all the craziness, right? We have someone in there who we are in the process of evicting, who is trying their best to fight the eviction. Literally, like it's almost like when you think about like the eviction process, and it goes to court and yada yada yada. I mean, we literally have our tenant, our COVID in chief, who is trying to fight the eviction notice that we've given him. And he's losing, right? The courts are like, you've got to be evicted, right? Like it's it is what it is. And so I mentioned earlier, maybe we need to give him another eviction notice. Somebody needs to go to the White House door, put a note. This is a notice. I mean, you can't even pay or quit. Just get out, right? Like just go, skedaddle. But anywho, I'm not going to talk about all of that. I'm not even going to talk about how we are seeing some posts, some people be fired in very high level cabinet positions, either with the FBI, CIA, Pentagon. It's mind boggling and it's troubling. And quite frankly, it literally makes me wonder. Like I mentioned, I think in a previous episode, that I literally can see, COVID in chief literally like maybe setting off all the nukes, or like, I don't know, doing stuff, but like not towards other countries, like setting them off here towards us. Oh, you didn't want to vote for me? Okay, I can't be here. Nobody will, right? I literally am wondering if he's setting up for something like ridiculously dangerous like that. Like, who knows? But anywho, I'm not going to talk about any of that as much as I would want to, and as much as I want to talk about how he has decided, and he has fooled some of y'all into thinking that 150 100,000 plus Americans per day contracting COVID and over 1,000 of our fellow Americans dying every day, it's okay. I could talk about that, but I'm not going to, because remember, we all know, because I've said it several times, that it is not okay. It is not okay. It will never be okay for me. Never. As long as it is, and it even goes beyond being like an American, like as a human, that is not okay. My gosh, people, my gosh. But look, let's talk about with the stimulus. The White House they've effectively, as much as they should be vacating like in the process of like trying to vacate the White House, they haven't vacated the White House. However, they have vacated their position in stimulus talks and current stimulus talks. They've essentially withdrawn from negotiations, and they've left everything up to Mitch McConnell, which you could say, given that he was just reelected, is fitting and appropriate, but kind of when you consider the values that our president should have, a president who, whether he's in position of being in power or not, should value the well-being of the American people and want to seek to do what's in the best interest. But we already know the devil we're dealing with, so I'm not going to even attempt to want to hope that we'd have a COVID in chief, a commander in chief, but we happen to have a COVID in chief who would kind of want to put the interests of the American people first, right? But so things right now are in the hands of Mitch McConnell. We've already talked about Mitch McConnell and kind of what he wants. But I actually have been hearing a lot of people, namely those on the left, literally appear to be enthusiastic about the fact that COVID in chief Donald Trump is no longer part of stimulus negotiations post-election, an election that he will not only concede to, but concede from, but he won't even admit that it's taken place. If you read some of his tweets, the only form of communication, the only way we know he's alive at this point. We don't see him. We don't, we just know that if he's alive and well on Twitter, we know that he's okay. And that he hasn't done anything to harm himself. And I hope he doesn't, because, that would be horrible. But so the president is, and I guess this is the phrase that I say all the time, and I guess it's just how people have phrases. My phrases, I've said this before, but I've said this before. When we look at stimulus talks pre-election, right? We had Nancy Pelosi trying to sell us on hope and change, or as I've heard it called, hopium. Oh, any minute now, it's coming. Oh, I feel the stimulus in my bones, right? Like, she knew good and well nothing was going to happen. She just wanted, again, the effects of the hopium to kind of linger in your system so you didn't freak the heck out. We obviously saw opposition from Mitch McConnell. But Mitch McConnell is a complicated man, and I'm getting to how this relates to the White House in just one moment. He's a complicated man. He tends to do what he thinks is politically expedient, right? And what he thought was politically expedient pre-election was to follow the lead of Donald Trump. Now, I don't care for Mitch McConnell. I don't. I think that he should have been voted out. I would have been celebrating that more in the streets probably than when people celebrated the election of President-elect Joe Biden, quite frankly. I probably would have been dancing in the street. Cannot dance at all, but I would have found a way to move and make something happen, right? But he wanted to follow the lead of the president. And that was actually a good thing. What? Yes, let me tell you. Because the only person on the other side, on the side of the Republicans, who wanted to actually, and not in like just based on what they said, but based on what they did, the only person who actually did something independently to actually get stimulus for the American people was COVID in chief, Donald Trump. Yes. Well, Brittany, what are you talking? Well, lost wages assistance program. He extended, when you look at you had some Republicans who, said, well, yeah, I would support, but they didn't do anything. They did nothing. They didn't try to corral their other party members. They did nothing. And you had a group of approximately 20 some odd Republicans who weren't up for re-election and just said, you know what? I don't give a damn. I'm not doing anything. I'm not helping you. I'm not giving another red nickel dime penny of my money. Let them tell it to you. They didn't realize that they are just the stewards of our money, right? Well, we can call it money, but if you want to really get hypothetical, it's not really money because it doesn't really exist. But anyway, so I think where I'm going with all of this, that it is not this rosy picture that you might be hearing painted about the fact that, oh, Donald Trump, he's, COVID in chief is not, he's not participating in stimulus conversations, and now it's just Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, and hopefully now that the adults are in the room, we'll get something done. First and foremost, especially for them to use the words adult, I mentioned in, I don't know if it was the last episode or the episode before the last, how Democrats need to be really careful about painting this picture of adults now back in the room, given that Americans, a sizable portion of Americans were willing to take a chance on Trump. And if they pluck this up this time around, they are going to be even more likely at a quicker pace to want to go back to give a non-politician a chance, whether that's Trump or somebody else. So you really have to be careful, you adults in the room. So anyways, going back to the White House and going back to Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump, it is not a good thing that Donald Trump has actually been removed from these conversations. Why, Brittany? Why? Well, again, not only was COVID in chief the only Republican who was actually willing to do something about stimulus, he was the only one who was willing to, for his own selfish political interests, which, I talked about, with Mitch McConnell, he really only does what's in his own best political interest. So the two of them were fine with saying, you know what, Nancy wants $2.2 trillion. I want more than that. I want a bigger, better, bestest package, right? Mitch McConnell said, look, I'll follow the president's lead. The problem was that the president, he was not in a position to wrangle Republicans together. That was Mitch McConnell's job. Mitch McConnell failed to do that. Now, with Trump removed from these conversations, we are not going to have really any Republicans willing to not even just exceed what the Democrats want in terms of what they're demanding. But we're really not going to have now any Republicans at the table who are willing to even attempt to come halfway. Even when you look at when the Republicans at a certain point were willing to come up to $1.9 trillion in terms of the size of the stimulus, who was responsible for that movement? Not Senate Republicans, not Mitch McConnell, but President Trump. President Trump ultimately, and who? Who was negotiating with Nancy Pelosi? Guys, I'm saddened because really the only people that you had fighting for the American people on the Republican side, as much as I call him COVID in chief, as much as any of us could demonize him, especially given that he is okay with 150,000 plus of our fellow Americans getting COVID and over 1,000 plus dying every day. We can absolutely demonize him for that. But when it comes to COVID-19 economic stimulus and relief that actually directly benefits your families, the average American, not people who have stocks and real estate and businesses and trust funds and all of that. No, for the average American who does not have any of that. All we had were Steve Mnuchin, but he wasn't the elected official. He wasn't calling the shots. He was acting on behalf of Donald Trump, which is why I credit Donald Trump when we even got to that $1.9 trillion. Now, here's the thing. Just because we got there, does that mean that Senate Republicans would have supported it? No! I think that was a pipe dream. That was a crack pipe dream. They absolutely, you think if they didn't go along with 1.2, $1.3 trillion, they were going to go at 1.9? You have to be higher than high, my brother. Like, come on. But look, Trump is out of the equation. So now, again, things are going to be left in the hands of Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell does what's politically expedient. Now, and actually, let me address something, because some people might be saying, well, Brittany, those Republicans, they weren't up for re-election. So if they're going to be up for re-election in this current cycle that is, that is technically about to start, do you think that will be, motivating for them to actually do something? The answer to that is no. Why? Even if people are up for re-election in the next cycle, it's too far out. I've said all the time that one of the things that politicians count on, and they do it rightly because unfortunately a lot of Americans do this, is they count on you having political amnesia. They count on the fact that they're able to hoodwink you, rob you, steal, kick you in the throat, you know what I mean, and beat you to a pulp and do everything to oppress progress in your life. They count on the fact that they can do all of that, but by the time you get to the polls, you forget about it. By the time you get to the polls, you see them kiss enough babies, shake enough hands, go to enough schools and read to children and, hold all these charity events and do all this positive, happy-go-lucky stuff that you completely forget about everything that they did. The fact that they beat you, they kicked you, they slapped you, they hurt you so badly. They count on the fact that you're going to forget it. And unfortunately, most Americans do. And because of that, we've ended up with a situation where these politicians can do everything that actually hurts their direct constituents. Nancy Pelosi, where she is out in crazy San Francisco in California, it is not her job to represent the interests of the people in New Orleans or the people they have their own elected officials for that, right? So your elected officials should be going and representing your interests. But they don't. And they don't because, again, right before their election, the few months before, you see them kissing babies, reading books, going to hospitals and kissing the poor, kissing the broken. And you decide, you know what? He's actually a good guy. But he just freaking robbed you at the beginning of the election cycle. He literally flipped you the bird. He literally pushed your grandmother down escalators. But you saw him kiss a baby, and that's okay. You saw him hold the Bible and shake it and say, "In God we trust." But the fact that he robbed a bunch of old people means nothing. It goes away. That is what's truly deplorable about our politics. And we can't blame the politicians for that. When are you going to decide that you are no longer going to have political amnesia? When are you going to decide that even if the news stops talking about the fact that they pushed your grandmother down a set of escalators, politically speaking, and, not literally, but figuratively, the fact that they wanted to take away stuff from the elderly, they wanted to take away stuff from the sick among us, they wanted to take away stuff from people who were poor and destitute. When are you finally going to say, you know what, even if the news stops talking about it, I'm going to remember it? But anywho, they count on this stuff, right? And because of this, for this reason, even though some of them may in this upcoming cycle be up for reelection, it's too far out. And they know because the historical norm is that your family, your friends, the people that they rob, the people that they kick and spit on, the people that they decide every day when they show up to work that they don't give a damn about, those people are not going to hold them accountable. They're going to have political amnesia. Literally, if you have to. These headlines that you see where these people, so and so voted against this, so and so did this, take a picture of it and save it on your phone. And right before you vote, look back at all of those things that these people did. So that way you remember who you're actually voting for years from now, what they actually did. There's going to be more scandals. There's going to be more stuff, but don't forget what they are doing to you now. Now, speaking of Trump was part of an evolutionary process, and I talked about this in the last episode, right? People who were surprised that they made it through 4 years of Donald Trump, and they're like, oh my gosh, this was so horrible. If you really understood, especially when we talked about the Republican Party and kind of where it goes from here, and the fact that it, quite honestly, in my opinion, is too late to take their party back. They've lost it. And it's kind of beyond repair. It's the pieces, it's too broken, too fractured. You cannot put this back. Maybe some miracle, I don't know, but in my opinion, you cannot put the Republican Party back. Who we had before, the John McCain's, like the just even, my gosh, when I think about Crybaby, what was his name? Who cried about everything, man. Like, he just got on TV. John, I don't know, but it's like when I think of some of the people that I literally would just die to have back in Congress, John Boehner, right? I mean, the man cried about everything, just got on TV and just the waterworks got to flowing, right? I literally long for John Boehner back. And when he was in Congress, I hated the man. But like, he was an actual Republican. Like, he had principles and values, despite the fact that they were somewhat questionable. It's more than kind of what you're seeing. Now you have the Tea Party elected. Now you have QAnon elected. I miss George Bush. Like, really? Like, I miss the man who got us into these, like, I miss that man. Give me him back, please. He was like, oh man. Man, oh man, oh man. But Trump was part of this kind of evolutionary process, right? And when I think about that, compromise didn't leave with the election of Joe Biden. When we decided as a country to evict President COVID in chief Donald Trump, it wasn't a situation where it's like, okay, compromise is gone, because compromise was gone well before the Donald Trump presidency. Compromise was gone years ago, years before Donald Trump. Maybe not to the degree and extent to which we see it gone now, but it was gone. But so I'm going to conclude. I've ranted a little bit and a lot of bit here, but I'm going to kind of again reiterate this. yes, you are going to hear people talk about, again, the true fact that the White House is no longer participating in stimulus conversations. They again, per political motivation, they have no reason to, right? As I was reading about how COVID in chief threw himself I guess a celebration party dinner celebrating, his win. And it's kind of odd when you think about it, because didn't he tell us in 2 weeks we're going to get the election results? But then he's celebrating the fact that he won. Like, I don't know if the man knows if he's coming or going, literally, right? But that said, the White House is no longer participating in these stimulus conversations. And it's unfortunate because, as much as some people aren't going to want to admit it and probably never would, Donald Trump was actually hope for something on stimulus in terms of from the Republicans. Now, whether or not he would have been able to do it is a different conversation, but at least the conversation that we had coming from him was more than I can guarantee you that we're going to see coming from Republicans now. That's the truth. I have no other way to put it to you. I want to talk about unemployment numbers. You've probably been hearing about the fact that unemployment is declining. Numbers are getting better. And as a result of that, specifically Republicans, they now don't think we need such a large stimulus package because more people are, or fewer people are employed. Let's talk about that. I actually had a conversation online with someone about this not too long ago. I think probably maybe 2-3 days ago online. When you look at these lower unemployment rates, I want you to think about how the numbers are calculated. Unemployment rates are not the number of Americans that we have that are labeled as unemployed don't get counted just by the government guessing. Okay. We get that number based on people who file weekly unemployment claims with their state. Keep in mind, you can only get unemployment if you are actively looking for employment currently. But in addition to that, and this is the key thing that I think most people need to take away and understand, is that we don't have an unlimited time in which people can claim unemployment benefits. So once a person exhausts their unemployment benefits, which if you listen to the last episode I did, I talked about how typically it's 26 weeks for the state. Once those 26 weeks are up, you can no longer get unemployment benefits. So then the question becomes, if you are no longer getting unemployment benefits and the government comes to understand who was unemployed by the number of people getting those benefits, once you stop getting those benefits, you're no longer counted in the numbers. And again, there is a time limit to the number of weeks a person can claim unemployment. Now, I could be wrong. Somebody please let me know. Is there a situation where any state here in the United States of America still asks people to report weekly that they are unemployed, even though the state is not paying them any benefits? To the best of my knowledge, that is not the case. So what that says to me is that, again, the point at which somebody exhausts their unemployment benefits, that person no longer has their face, their situation counted, tallied in the unemployment numbers. So when you actually really look at that and consider that, that actually bodes well for the numbers themselves. How so? Because you ultimately know that the maximum amount of time that a person can be counted on average in the United States as unemployed is 26 weeks. And you actually know that nobody is going to be unemployed forever. Nobody is going to be unemployed for years. 26 weeks. And then they just magically disappear. Wouldn't it be awesome if your debts worked that way? It's like you knew you had to pay them. You paid, some of your monthly payments, but you knew in this amount of time, in 26 weeks, the debt will just disappear. You'll actually not feel so bad about it. And maybe that's why some of our politicians don't feel so bad about these unemployment numbers, because they know people are just automatically going to disappear off the rolls because we don't count them. I mean, and actually, when you look at the kind of exchange, the government is saying, we'll give you money in exchange for being able to count you as unemployed. But there's no incentive, nor is there any current program set up to count people as unemployed once that incentive of a payment to that person is gone. So again, hear me very clear. People are not counted when unemployment runs out. The conversation I was having with somebody, and it was in an economic forum online, and the person was like, well, you just don't understand because, states, they do count like the long-term unemployed. Well, the long-term unemployed are people who essentially reach that maximum threshold that the state allows as the maximum number of weeks that you can be counted as unemployed. Again, if I'm wrong, somebody please inform me of some way where states, some sort of government, state, local, federal, whatever, reaches out to people on a regular basis and says, well, hey, are you unemployed? But they're not paying them. We don't have that. So literally, again, once a person exhausts their benefits, they just disappear. And so when they disappear, what happens? The numbers go down. It's kind of like a self-cleaning oven. It gets dirty. The buildup happens. But this is a self-cleaning oven where you don't even have to press a button. It just automatically turns on and cleans itself because they just disappear off the rolls. So I say this because I don't want you to be fooled. When you hear politicians, namely those on the right, who want to tell you things are getting better. When they tell you things are getting better, I want you to close your ears and open your eyes. Close your ears. Look at your situation. Look at the situation of those around you. Look at the situation of those you love. Look at the situation of those in your community. Those are the numbers that you need to believe. My company had 25 people. Now we have 10. That should be your unemployment rate. I have 3 siblings. So my parents have 4 kids. I'm the only one with a job now. That should be the unemployment rate that you calculate. Again, politics is about perception, and all politicians, here's the deal. I've said before, here we go, using the words of President-elect. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. Politicians, they cannot be politicians. They cannot get to where they are without doing what is politically expedient. So as much as I demonize people who do things that are politically expedient, know and realize that I realize that is necessary in politics. However, if they are a person who genuinely places the interests of the American people above that of their own, which sometimes and most often they'll find that their personal interests conflict with the interests of the American people, what we should have is a situation where they are willing to put themselves on the chopping block. Maybe it means that they lose their current position in politics, but you know what? In case you didn't know, politicians, just because they're not a politician anymore, even if they don't go back to the private sector, they have so many options available to them that allows them to stay in politics, just not in the same position. Maybe they get into lobbying. Maybe they, get into being, with the super PACs such as ours. You know what I mean? Like, there are so many different options available to these people. So don't feel bad. Like, oh my gosh, their families aren't going to be able to eat because they're going to be out of a job. Like, no, it's not that cut and dry for these people. Okay. But so here's what I want you to understand. That said, remember, I mentioned Republicans, they are using this data to say, well, look, we don't need to do anything, or we just need to give out a few nickels because it's not that bad. They're doing that not because they even genuinely believe it. They're doing it because it's politically expedient. They didn't want to give you money anyway. They just are now able to use that data to support their claims. Again, I said earlier in a different segment for this episode, you can use data to say whatever you want it to say. You can use it to and have it be interpreted however you like. You don't even believe what I'm saying. Just believe the methodology. The methodology here is that when a person exhausts their benefits, and again, if you don't believe me, please find for yourself, tell me about some other way that they count unemployed people, because they can't just guess the number. Well, last week we had 50,000 unemployed people here in this city, so we're just going to assume they have to count these numbers. If they're not giving them unemployment benefits in exchange for being able to count them, how are they determining who is unemployed? Once that 26 weeks is up, how are they determining? They don't. This is how the numbers appear to get better. This is why we need to demand that they actually give us real unemployment numbers. And the real unemployment numbers say that, yes, we are paying people, the state is paying people 26 weeks of unemployment, but there are other people who they're not getting money anymore. They've exhausted their benefits, but they're still sitting at home searching every day for a job, but can't find one because of COVID-19. We need those real unemployment numbers. And honestly, as Americans, we need to start demanding that. Maybe it means that, hey, unemployment has to last a little bit long. I mean, the solution is obviously not just like pay people indefinitely, but we've got to have something, or we at least have to be honest about these numbers as we actually report them. Because as they're being reported now, like, oh, it's getting better because the economy is getting, that's not what's happening. What's happening is they are falling off the freaking rolls and you are no longer counting them. An example of this, for instance, let me take a sip of my coffee here. An example of this was when you looked at individual states. You had states that would report, our unemployment numbers are getting better because our fewer people are on unemployment, right? On the surface, that sounds great. But when you actually looked at what was happening, under the CARES Act, we had the pandemic unemployment compensation thing or something. All these PUEC, PPPP. I really think they like the letter P. I think that's like their favorite letter to use. But so you had a federally government funded program where essentially what was happening is people were coming off of state unemployment and then they were automatically being transitioned onto federal unemployment. But the states were going around, certain states were going around talking about, oh, things aren't so bad here. Our unemployment numbers are dropping. Yeah, they're dropping, but tell the rest of the freaking story. The rest of the story is that your unemployed people are going on to federal programs and they're still unemployed. And then the people who fall off of those federal programs, as they're about to do on like the 26th of December, the last week of December, what's going to happen then? You're going to have, see, in January, the numbers got so better, the economy is booming. No, what happened is that a lot of people just lost access to their unemployment benefits. I'm telling you this before it happens. Mark my words. The Trump administration isn't going to be saying anything because they're too busy dealing with their eviction notice. But you're going to have Republicans in office who have been reelected or who weren't up for reelection in this last cycle. They're going to be saying, see, the economy is booming. America's great again, baby. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is people have fallen off the rolls. And in some cases, like the federal program, the rolls have been thrown in the trash because they're not available anymore. Economists, what they are saying at this point, with us dealing with a surge in COVID-19, and I will say it again, and hopefully you're tired of hearing me say it because I'm tired of saying it. We have now decided as a country that 150 plus freaking thousand Americans getting COVID-19 is okay. That is not okay. We've decided that well over 1,000 people, Americans, humans, fellow human beings, dying every day needlessly is okay. That is not okay. But economists are saying with the surge in COVID-19 numbers, with more and more people getting COVID-19, and with stimulus benefits running out. We covered that in the last episode. We talked, I think it was about 5 different forms of stimulus that either are running out by the 31st or already have ran out for people. When you couple those things together, the economy literally, and this is the words that was used, the word hobbled. The economy is going to be hobbled. It's going to be beat and bludgeoned and just it's going to be hobbling along. Our economy should have been up and running. Our economy should have been okay, at least stabilized, but we still need life support. We are in critical condition. Things are literally getting worse daily. Don't believe me? Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers of your fellow Americans who are getting COVID every day. And if you don't care about that, you, my friend, you're not really an American. You may have citizenship, but you do not have the American spirit within you, because Americans care about fellow Americans, even those we don't know, we've never met. We care that they are okay. Y'all better be glad that I'm not the president. I love politics, but I promise you, I will never run for political office. But if I were president, you know what President Brittany's plan would be? All of y'all would be locked up in the house. If I see you, open your door and come out. You are going to jail, and you are going to jail immediately. And then when you go to jail, and when we run out of prison space, because I understand that some of y'all are so stupid and don't care about trying to beat this virus. You want to come out your house, throw your COVID parties. All of our prisons are going to fill up. And again, this is just if this was President Brittany. Then what we would do, these companies that were closing, all this extra space, I would just put all y'all in there. And then when a COVID outbreak happened, I wouldn't give you any medical attention. You didn't believe in science. You didn't believe in, beating the virus. You thought it was a hoax. Okay, deal with it by yourself, all of you together. Good luck. Again, I'd lock you all up. But on the flip side, I understand that to make that happen, you guys need to pay your bills. You guys need food. So I'd give you stimulus checks on a recurring basis. I'd give everybody. Okay, stay up in the house, order all the Amazon, watch all the Netflix you want, work from home if you can. I'd help businesses, but they wouldn't be my main priority. The consumers, the average everyday American would be. But again, key point that I want to make very, very clear. I'd lock you all up. in your homes. And if you didn't stay in your home, I'd lock you up and take you to jail. You better be glad I am not the president. Because I can guarantee you we'd have a hard lockdown for about a month. Would COVID completely disappear? Probably not, but we would not have 150,000 Americans dying, or excuse me, contracting COVID and over 1,000 dying every day. Because that's not okay. That would never be okay with me. And I think it's sad that it's okay with so many of you. Not you personally, because I understand people listening to me probably don't think that. But again, be glad that I am not the president, because our prisons would be full. Would be full of people you know. I was talking to a family member, and the family member said that they literally just went to the store, and I was telling her, man, I said, if I was president, and just giving her my plans, and I said, look, you would have just went to jail. I'd put my own family in jail. My mom went to a doctor's appointment yesterday, and I went with her, so I'd probably lock me and her up together. Because we all need, that's how, man, the country would hate me, but you know what? The country would be safe. Country would be great again. And I'm going to end with this. In the last episode, I talked about how I really don't think that any other Democratic challenger during the Democratic primary would have been elected other than Joe Biden. Everyone else was too far left, right? And Joe Biden, President-elect Biden, was the centrist that even had a remote chance of being able to kind of, sort of, hopefully unify America. But there is somebody I want to pay mention to, because I think that conditions were not right for him at the time when he was on the scene. But had he been on the scene a little bit later, or if COVID had happened a little earlier, I think that he probably would have been a better option, and he's way to the left compared to Biden. And that's Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang is the universal income guy, right? That's what he's known for. That's what his brand has been, universal income. When most people think of Andrew Yang, you think of UBI, universal basic income. When he was in the race, COVID was not raging. COVID was not a thing, right? It was, it was barely, it wasn't a thing. And I honestly believe with every bone in my body that had COVID been surging, or at least really super close to surging at the time that he was on the race, he would have been a more optimal candidate because of the appeal that he would have had to the masses, given what we are dealing with. And he would have been the man for the job, quite frankly, more so than Joe Biden. I think Andrew Yang would have done more to unify the Democrats, maybe in a way, but he would have done more to unify the Democrats, but I don't know if he would have been able to unify the country in the way that Joe Biden can, in a way that would have led to the Democrats winning the presidency. But I just kind of an interesting note that I just kind of wanted to point out. So again, had COVID kind of been raging, I think that Andrew Yang could have been the guy, and quite frankly, probably should have been the guy. I want to end today's episode talking about, my final segment is going to talk about something that probably most of you aren't aware of. We are less than a month away from a government shutdown. It sounds scary, government shutdown. Like, we've heard it at various points before, especially and I think most Americans now probably really got acquainted with this phrase, government shutdown, during the Obama presidency, even though, potential shutdowns had kind of been the case before, but they really hadn't become um, something that the average everyday American kind of got used to hearing, right? But we essentially need um, to have the government allocate funds and basically fund the government on December 11th or before December 11th, which is less than a month away. Today is the 13th. We had kind of this happen not too long ago, another potential government shutdown. You might have heard about it very briefly. What was it, like maybe 2 months ago, something of the sort, 2-3 months ago. And a lot of people, and I'm talking about it happened during, since COVID. But when it happened, a lot of people had considered if Nancy Pelosi should not agree to fund the government without stimulus being passed. And originally, she kind of was like, no, we're not going to agree to. And then she was like, you know what? I'm going to do the air quote thing here, responsible thing, and fund the government without stimulus, right? I have 5 words for Nancy Pelosi or anyone who knows her. Do not do that again. All right? Nancy Pelosi needs to not fund the government without the passage of stimulus. Period. Point blank. If you fund the government yet again without stimulus, we're going to end right back in the same situation, especially because, and this is true, Nancy Pelosi has lost some leverage that she had related to stimulus talks that she had before the election. Now that leverage, she still has leverage in the game, but not as much as she had before. This will give you leverage, Nancy. Demand. You want government funding? You want our government not to shut down? You need to stimulate the economy. Make the other side defend their desire to not stimulate the economy and fund the government. Make them defend it. Because quite frankly, if we don't have a stimulus, the government needs to shut down because it's not helping the people anyway. What the heck do you need to stay open for? Close. A business that isn't serving its customers, close the dang doors. I think she needs to stand her ground. Republicans they're fond of that, right? Stand your ground. Stand your ground, Nancy. Do not fund the government without a stimulus. This is the only thing that you can do. We need money and we need it now. Now, maybe that means you have to be flexible on that $2.2 trillion. Before, I probably would have said, stay at the $2.2 trillion. And you heard me say earlier in the show, they need more than $2.2 trillion, given the damage that has been done since the last few weeks. But get us something to hold us over until we get President Joe Biden. One thing you can do, and I think maybe don't focus on new stuff that needs to happen, but stuff that's set to phase out, stuff that has already phased out. At the very least, maybe, for instance, with unemployment, maybe you can't get those extended benefits, that extra money. But you know what? Maybe what you can do, how the PUA program is set to run out the end of December, maybe you can negotiate for that to be in place until maybe March. Don't even focus on any extra money. Just go with some very simple and basic stuff that you can get past and couple it with the funding of the government. You want the government funded? I need PUA extended to March, the end of March. We're not going to even talk about any extra money. I just need that program extended until after March. You want extra money? I need unemployment. I need those extra weeks. Instead of 39 weeks, we need to take it up to 49 or 59. What to buy you time to get into Q1, Q2 of 2021. Because we know help isn't going to come for the American people under the Joe Biden administration at the very earliest until Q2. You need to get us something to hold us over until Q2. Eviction moratoriums, extend those. The tax hikes that are supposed to come into effect in January, that the president set to come into effect in January, those need to go. You don't need to have some big long list. I understand you're not going to be able to do everything for everybody. But the bare minimum that you can get through, seek to do the least amount of damage. Damage is going to be done. We can't stop it. We've gone too far. The house is burned too much. There's going to be smoke damage and fire damage and all. We're going to have it. But can we at least save the structure for when we actually start to rebuild? We can. But Nancy has to have the balls to do it. And the balls come from saying no funding the government without the bare minimum forms of stimulus that I need. And hopefully you guys, my listeners, push for that as well. Hopefully pundits, well, they're not going to demand that, but hopefully, again, supporters of Nancy will say, Nancy, stand your ground. Now she might, especially, since there was kind of conversation about, oh, do we need to remove Nancy from her post? And she might kind of feel willing to maybe capitulate. Maybe if she notices her lack of leverage in this situation compared to before and people's kind of unhappiness with her leadership. I've already addressed that. She's the person to lead the Democrats at this point right now. Absolutely. As much as I really don't care for her, it's the truth. But she needs to have the balls. Nancy, have the balls. Do not fund the government until we get some minimum forms of stimulus. I'll leave you to determine what that is, but get together with your caucus and decide what are the top 5 things that we need. Okay, stay away from we need extra money from unemployment. We need, contact tracing. Okay, can you just get tracing right now? Can you at least get money to help with tracing? Can you at least get some more money for a vaccine? And don't try to do it all right now. Even though I agree that we need it all right now, we just need the bare minimum to hold us over to Q2. Can you do it? Will you do it? You need to do it. It's fall, and you know what that means, right? You can find us on Facebook. No, I know that fall and Facebook have nothing to do with each other, but they both start with the letter F. So, according to my logic, perfect time to tell you about finding us on Facebook since it is fall. Isn't that exceptional logic? By my point of view, it is. Anywho, in the description box below, you'll find a link to our Facebook page. Check us out. If you like us, like our page, we'll be more than glad to have you. Again, find us on Facebook. Look in the description box below for the link. Hey, this is Brittany. Just wanted to shoot you a quick reminder. Look in the description box of this episode and you can find a link to our website. On our website, you can find our latest blog posts. You can find our contact information. You even want to make a contribution, you can go over there and do that as well. You can find out the policies we are looking at and targeting as an organization. I say all the time that we are a tax-exempt political organization. If you want to know more about that, again, go on over to our website, our-pac.com, where you can find out everything you want to know. You can do everything you want to do. We will gladly welcome you on our website with open arms. Again, check out our website in the description box below. All right, so thank you again for listening to today's episode of our Pack Politics podcast. Few takeaways from today's episode. Congress is all going to be They're all going to be there on Monday in the building, but mentally they are going to be checked out. So don't expect anything to get done in between Monday and the end of January, right? When we have our inauguration for President-elect Joe Biden. Also keep in mind that Mitch McConnell is finally being serious about the fact that he has not been serious. And so while that might make you feel hopeful, don't feel too hopeful about the fact that things will actually get done, because even as you consider that the White House is no longer participating in stimulus talks, as much as some people don't want to hear it, Donald Trump, COVID in chief, was really the only Republican who was actually doing stuff related to our stimulus negotiations. So don't expect Mitch McConnell to kind of pull a rabbit out the hat and actually start working in the interests of the American people, because he only is seeking to work in his own political best interests. And I also want you to remember, again, kind of wrapping up here, what we've talked about. Remember, as you hear these talks about unemployment numbers, I really want you to understand the numbers that are being put in front of you, because you're not seeing the complete picture, namely because Americans fall off the rolls once they exhaust their benefits and they're no longer being counted. So it's not like these people magically get jobs and everything is okay. What's happening is they are just no longer being counted. So keep that in mind, especially as Republicans try and tell you, well, see, we don't need stimulus because it's getting better. It's not getting better. People are just disappearing. And speaking of disappearing, funding for our government is essentially disappearing, and we do need funding to be agreed upon by the 11th of December. And if we don't get that, our government is going to shut down. And quite frankly, I love being an American, but our government needs to shut down. If it's not willing to help its people by providing economic stimulus and relief, what the hell do you need to be open for? Close it. Close the doors. You just join the rest of us. Be unemployed, right? So that said, again, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I know it was longer than I originally planned, but in the words of COVID in chief, it is what it is. Stay safe, wear your hazmat suits. I understand some of you out there might be feeling tired. You might be tired of the lockdowns and you want to see your friends, you want to go to weddings, you want to do all this stuff, but, we just can't right now. And as much as we talk about COVID in chief needing to be an adult and accept his eviction notice, as Americans, we need to all be adults and accept that we are dealing with a very serious and very real problem. And it's going to take all of us to get through this. We can't have some Americans deciding they want to wear masks. We can't have some Americans deciding that they want to use hand sanitizer and wash their hands. We all have to come together, and we have to have enough of us together agreeing on what we need to do. We need a national plan. Yes, some states have their own kind of personal things that they're dealing with, but we do need a personal plan. I mean, a national plan. Right? We need national leadership to make that happen. And so hopefully we will get that on January 20th at 12 noon. I know we have seen kind of previews with these kind of news conferences and press conferences that we've been getting from our president-elect, and I'm looking forward to it. But as much as we're all looking forward to finally having leadership on this issue of COVID economically and from a health perspective, we still have to deal with where we are as a country. And where we are as a country right now is not okay. We're in a place where 150,000 Americans are getting COVID every day. Very personal level. Previously, I shared that I knew 19 people who got COVID, one of which died. In the last few days, that number has now gone to 29 people. I know 29 people who have contracted COVID-19. People I personally know, not like, oh, I know someone who knows someone. No, I know people. I have talked to these people. 29 people I know that have had COVID, one of which is dead in the ground, did not get to say goodbye to his children, his grandchildren. Went into the hospital, was told he was getting better. Family was celebrating for him to come home. Next thing you know, family getting a call saying, well, it wasn't my family, let me clarify that, but his family was getting a call saying, you guys need to say goodbye. And then he was dead. He won't be there this Thanksgiving. I will tell you, my own freaking family. There's this conversation in my own family, as I'm sure with many of you around the country. You're talking about this time of year is typically filled with family, whether blood family or not, those you want to get together with and celebrate the holidays. A member of my family had the audacity to suggest, well, maybe we get together this year. I said, well, look, y'all will get together, but I won't. I will be somewhere locked up by myself. And when y'all get COVID-19, don't call me and tell me about it, because I'm warning you. We've got technology. I even gave a suggestion, and again, I'm talking about my own personal family. I gave a suggestion. I said, well, look, typically what happens anyways is Aunt so-and-so cooks the turkey and then my grandmother does the ham, and then so-and-so does this, and everybody kind of does, and we bring together. Okay, well, you know what? Well, let's do that, but not all be in the same house. I'll tell you, 2 of my aunts got COVID, right? I cared about them, checked on them every day. I didn't go in their house. I called them every day, several times a day, right? What would I go and do? You need anything? Now this was before. Right now, I get pretty much deliveries all the time from the stores. Like, I will not go into stores. Like, and I suggest if you have to go into stores, go in for like one item. But if you have to do grocery shopping, literally try and do it when there aren't a lot of people. Get up when they first open. You know what I mean? If you can get your stuff delivered, get it delivered. But I'm just kind of being very open and transparent. Had 2 of my aunts. They live in the same house. They got COVID. Before I started getting deliveries, I would go to the store, get stuff for them, put it on their doorstep, ring the doorbell. The rule was, you do not open your door to get these groceries until I'm in the car and I'm backing out the driveway. We can do the same thing for Thanksgiving. Let's make the stuff. You make such and such for so-and-so's household, put stuff and put it in for so-and-so's household, and take it, put it on the doorstep. Everyone heat it up and we can eat it together on FaceTime or Zoom or Google Duo. I don't care, but I can tell you what, Brittany will not be sitting at a table with people this year. Now, I don't personally, some people really look forward to the food for Thanksgiving. Personally, I don't. No offense, I don't eat ham, really. I don't, when it comes to turkey, I'll eat deli meat turkey, but actual turkey, I can do without it. You know what I mean? That's just me. What I look forward to on Thanksgiving is not the food, but the family. But I can still enjoy my family this year without putting them or myself in danger. And I suggest you do the same, because this is serious. How the numbers that I just talked about, how I said I knew 19 people, and now I know 29 people who have COVID. The other 10 people I know that have COVID, the newer 10 people from one family. A family, friend's family. I literally love this woman dearly. My grandmother's best friend. And my grandmother's best friend, now in the hospital with COVID. She actually had COVID. Then she went sent home. And then the nurse came out to the house to check on her. And she could barely breathe. And now she's in the ICU. And you know what? She's too old for a ventilator. So we're just hoping that she makes this through. This stuff is serious. My family, look, I've said before, I ordered some goggles. I heard that COVID could get in through the eyes, and then I had a conversation with my sisters, and she's like, well, you know what? If it can get in through your eyes, it can get in through your ears. I'm on the verge of ordering some earplugs. Call me crazy. My uncle, well, I have 2 uncles. One of my uncles said to me, you know, Brittany, he saw me with the goggles, and he was like, oh, yeah, you know, you definitely ain't about to get a man with goggles. I'd rather be single and alive than have COVID and have a man. But look, I've done enough rambling. Take this seriously because it's very serious. My grandmother she told me she was going to go out to the store. I got her signed up for the delivery thing to get the groceries and stuff. And, you know, I showed her how to do it on her iPad and stuff. And then she was saying, well, you know, I'm going to go to the store. And I said, Grandma, is going to the store worth getting COVID? Not saying don't go to the store, but just be strategic about it. Again, if you know, okay, I got to get 1, maybe 2 items where I can get in and get out, go during those not high time hours. Go when you know the store is first opening or when it's kind of closing and you know there aren't that many people there. But don't go in the middle of the day when everybody is there hacking and coughing. And do not do that to yourself. Don't do that to your family. I've got family in one state where the state is literally locked down. You really can't go anywhere and eat and, you know, and sit down and eat. And then I've got family in another state where you can go in and sit and eat, go to the bar, go to the casino, and it's like nothing is going on there. And I told my family member, I said, look, they were saying, well, you know, I'm going to go get some food and, you know, and I said, well, look, I hope, you know, all these places pretty much have curbside now. No one is saying don't go out to eat. Go, park, have them bring your food out. You're already taking a risk by strangers you don't know cooking your food. But if you have to take that risk, don't go in and get it. If you have an iPhone or whatever and you can do the contactless pay, do it. It is not worth you dying. 2 of the people that I know who have had COVID. Now, yes, one of them had health conditions before, serious health conditions, and she's lucky to be alive and not battered down, bruised, and beaten by this thing, but she's dealing with lesions. I know 2 people who have had COVID that are dealing with lesions on their lungs that now as a result, they have to have oxygen in the home and then when they walk around. You don't want that to be you. You don't want to be one of those people who were able to come up the stairs and now you can't even go up the stairs. You can't walk. I, by nature, am someone who is a sympathetic individual. I am, by nature, someone who's a very caring individual, almost to the point where that can be detrimental for me. I tend to put other people before myself, especially family. But maybe the place we need to get, when I mentioned earlier in this episode that if I were president, people would probably hate me because the rule I would have is if you come out your house, you were going to jail. And if I take you to jail for being out of your house, you're not getting treatment for COVID. Of course, we need to care for people, especially if you're like me and you're a Christian. You're expected to love people, right? You're supposed to show love to people. That's the greatest commandment of all, is to love. But maybe we need to rethink what love means in this situation. We've been asking people to love themselves and love others by putting on gloves and masks and washing their hands and doing all that stuff. But if they're still refusing, maybe the love we need to show them is hold them accountable when they make the choice to not love themselves and hold other people accountable. What that accountability looks like, I don't know. Maybe it's fines. Maybe it's jail time. Some people might even say maybe it's withholding medical treatment. I don't know. But I'm done. I'm just going to end this by saying, again, stay safe. But know from the bottom of my heart, I have a 2-year-old nephew who I love to pieces. He does something wrong and I have to look him in his little eyes that are just so perfect. And I have to tell him, you know, if he just say, for instance, he gets mad and he throws something or, you know, does something and I tell him, Anthony, I look him in his eyes, right? Stoop down his level and I look him in his eyes and I say, Anthony, or as I call him, Booski. I don't know where I got that from, but it's just so cute because he's so cute. Booski, Anthony, that is not okay. In this moment, I am looking at you, my listeners, my fellow Americans, and I'm telling you, 150,000 Americans every day getting COVID. 1,100 Americans, 1,000 Americans plus per day dying from COVID. That is not okay. Nor will it ever be with me, nor should it ever be with you.